When we think of legendary car designs, we usually think of Italian studios. Ferrari, Lamborghini, Pagani, design houses with decades of craft behind them, working for established manufacturers with deep pockets and stable production lines. However, the most recognizable car of the 1980s was designed by a man who had never run his own company, built in a country that had never made a sports car, financed by a government that was trying to solve an unemployment crisis, and styled by a designer who was simultaneously working on something else entirely. The DeLorean DMC-12 should not exist. Every condition surrounding its creation was wrong. John DeLorean spent 14 years at General Motors and rose faster than almost anyone in the company's history. By his early 40s, he was running the Pontiac division, where he had personally overseen the creation of the GTO, widely considered the car that invented the American muscle category. In 1973, he walked away. His vision was specific. He wanted to build a sports car, a machine that wouldn't rust, wouldn't crumple in a low-speed collision, and would last decades rather than years. The centerpiece of that vision was the body. Instead of painted steel, DeLorean wanted the exterior panels made from brushed stainless steel, unpainted, raw, a material no production car had ever used for body panels before. The other defining feature was the doors. Again, not a new idea. The Mercedes 300 SL had used them in the 1950s, but no production sports car had used them since because the engineering challenges they create are substantial. DeLorean's engineers solved it with a gas-charged strut system that held the doors open under their own weight. The shape of the car was designed by Giorgetto Giugiaro, arguably the most prolific and influential automotive designer of the 20th century, the man responsible for the original VW Golf, the BMW M1, the Lotus Esprit, and dozens of other icons. Giugiaro was working on multiple projects simultaneously when DeLorean approached him. The engine chosen was a 2.85-liter V6 mounted in the rear of the car behind the driver. It produced 130 horsepower. On paper, by late 1978, the DMC-12 was real. The only problem was finding somewhere to build it. Building a car requires a factory. A factory requires land, infrastructure, machinery, trained workers, and an enormous amount of capital. DeLorean had raised money from investors, but nowhere near enough to build a manufacturing facility from scratch. However, in 1978, something unusual was happening in Northern Ireland. The British government, desperate to address chronic unemployment in Belfast, was actively looking for businesses willing to invest. DeLorean took the deal. The British government committed approximately £84 million in support. A factory was built in Dunmurry, on the outskirts of West Belfast. The workforce had never built a car before. Many had never worked in manufacturing at all. They were trained from scratch. The production process for the stainless steel panels alone was unlike anything else in the industry. Stainless steel is significantly harder to form than conventional automotive steel. It cannot be painted in the traditional sense. The brushed finish is the surface, which means every panel had to be handled with extreme care to avoid scratching. The manufacturing tolerances required were tighter than most of the factory's workers had ever encountered. The first DMC-12 rolled off the production line in January 1981. It was, by any objective measure, an extraordinary achievement. A completely novel car. The automotive press flew to Belfast, drove the car, and filed their reviews. The verdict was complicated. The DeLorean DMC-12 that arrived in American showrooms in 1981 was priced at $25,000, roughly equivalent to $85,000 today. For that money, buyers received the stainless steel body, the gull-wing doors, the Giugiaro design, a leather interior, and a car that looked unlike anything else on the road. What they also received was 130 horsepower. In 1981, a Porsche 911 produced 172 horsepower. A Corvette produced 190. The DeLorean's V6, in its US specification emissions-tuned form, was slower than cars costing significantly less. Road and Track tested it and recorded a 0 to 60 time of 10.5 seconds. For a car positioned as a sports car and priced like one, 10.5 seconds was a problem that no amount of stainless steel could solve in a press review. The handling, by contrast, was genuinely praised. The rear engine layout gave it a balance that reviewers found engaging. The interior, while cramped by modern standards, was well finished. The doors worked exactly as designed and created an arrival experience that no other car on the road could match. However, the performance deficit was the story. The car looked like it should be fast, cost like it should be fast, and wasn't fast. The disconnect between the visual promise of the DMC-12 and its actual performance numbers became the defining narrative around the vehicle, a narrative that overshadowed everything the car genuinely did well. DeLorean had planned to address this. A twin turbocharged version was in development that would have pushed output to over 200 horsepower. A 5-speed manual gearbox was being worked on to replace the 5-speed automatic that most cars shipped with in the US. None of those developments made it to production because by the time they were being finalized, the company had run out of time. By early 1982, DeLorean Motor Company was in serious financial trouble. The production targets that had justified the British government's investment had not been met. The original plan called for 20,000 6,000 cars per year. Actual production in 1981 was approximately 7,500. Sales in the US were slower than projected, partly because of the performance criticism, and partly because some early cars had been shipped to dealers before quality issues were fully resolved, creating warranty problems that damaged the brand's reputation in its most critical early period. The factory was operating at a fraction of its designed capacity. The workforce was being sustained largely on government support. DeLorean was in constant negotiation with investors, banks, and the British government, trying to secure the bridge financing that would keep the company alive long enough for the turbo version and the manual gearbox to reach market. In February 1982, the British government withdrew its support. The factory was placed into receivership. Production stopped. Approximately 9,000 cars had been built. Around 6,500 of those were already in the United States. The remaining 2,500 cars sat in the factory, unsold. Workers who had been trained from nothing to build one of the most unusual cars in the world collected their final paychecks and went home. The DeLorean DMC-12 had been in production for just over a year. However, the story of the car was not over. In some ways, it was just beginning. In October 1982, 8 months after the factory closed, John DeLorean was arrested in a Los Angeles hotel room. The FBI had been conducting a sting operation. Undercover agents had approached DeLorean with a proposition: invest in a cocaine trafficking operation and use the profits to save his company. DeLorean, by the government's account, agreed. The transaction was filmed. The footage showed DeLorean holding a bag of cocaine and describing it as better than gold. He was charged with drug trafficking. The charges carried a potential sentence of life imprisonment. The trial lasted 2 years. DeLorean's defense argued entrapment, that the FBI had targeted a desperate man and manufactured a crime that would not have occurred without their instigation. In 1984, the jury acquitted him on all counts. The judge later called the government's conduct in the case outrageous, but the acquittal came too late to matter for the car. By 1984, the DMC-12 had been out of production for 2 years. The company's assets had been sold off. The Belfast factory had been converted to other uses. The brand existed only in the inventory of used car dealers. Then, in 1985, a filmmaker named Robert Zemeckis needed a time machine. The production designer on Back to the Future, Lawrence Paul, was tasked with finding a vehicle that looked futuristic enough to be convincing as a time machine without requiring a full custom build. Several concepts were considered, including a refrigerator. What Zemeckis and his team eventually landed on was the DeLorean DMC-12. The gull-wing doors were the deciding factor. When Marty McFly walks toward the time machine for the first time and the doors rise open, the visual language is unmistakable. This is not a normal car. The shape was aggressive and angular in exactly the way that read as futuristic to a 1985 audience. The film was released in July 1985 and became the highest-grossing film of the year. It was followed by 2 sequels. The DeLorean appeared in all 3. By the time the trilogy was complete, the car had more screen time in major Hollywood productions than almost any vehicle in cinema history. The cultural effect was immediate and permanent. A car that had been in production for barely a year was transformed by a single film into one of the most recognizable objects of the 20th century. Children who were born after the factory closed knew the shape before they knew the name. The gull-wing doors became shorthand for the future itself in a way that no amount of advertising could have manufactured. The used car market responded accordingly. DMC-12S, that had sold new for $25,000 and depreciated sharply through the early 1980s, began appreciating. By the 1990s, a clean example was a collector's item. By the 2000s, a low-mileage car was approaching 6 figures. Today, a well-preserved DMC-12 sells for between $50,000 and $100,000, depending on condition and provenance, with exceptional examples exceeding that significantly. Approximately 6,500 cars survive. In 2008, a Texas-based company called DeLorean Motor Company, no direct corporate connection to the original, but the holder of the name and the parts supply chain, began selling new DMC-12S, built from new old stock parts sourced from the original Belfast factory inventory. For a period, the cars were sold to collectors who wanted a new DMC-12, built to original specifications. In recent years, there have been credible announcements of an electric DeLorean revival. Whether that car reaches production is, as of now, unresolved. What is not unresolved is what the original car meant. The DMC-12 was commercially unsuccessful. It was underpowered relative to its competition. Its manufacturer went bankrupt in its first year of production. Its founder was arrested on federal charges before the first film using his car as a prop had even been released. And yet, it is the car that proved stainless steel could be used as a body material. It is the car that brought the gull-wing door back in a way that influenced every dramatic supercar door design that followed. The Lamborghini Murcielago, the McLaren P1. Most cars become obsolete. They get replaced, forgotten, crushed, recycled. The DeLorean DMC-12 became a time machine. Not because of the flux capacitor, because a car that existed for 1 year in a Belfast factory somehow outlasted every single competitor from its era in the one place that matters more than sales figures or horsepower numbers: the imagination.